D&D is a sort of hard thing to keep doing. A lot of the time you'll find that a lot of these long games eventually just sort of end some days, and this has happened to me, which is why I'm making this video. This video is going to go over all the plans that I had originally for my sort of long-running game at the table that I had, just to sort of definitively end it and make these plans that I was quite proud of known to anyone who was interested in them. Okay, so this is a weird video that I'm making. This is probably just going to be me rambling into a mic for a long while. I've got a script here. I don't know if the script's going to work or not, because I always go against my scripts whenever I do have them. But, let's see what happens. This is going to be fun. This is how I was going, or what I had planned for one of my D&D campaigns that had ended recently, that I just wanted to get out there, because I was actually really proud of it. So I just wanted to write this, and, if anyone does watch it, great. If anyone who was in the game watches it, then great. This is just me definitively putting into it by making all of the information that I had that was going to be secret now knowledged and acknowledged. So, this is just going to be me kind of rambling into a mic for a long time, reading off my Google document of my DM plans and stuff like that. So, let's start with the very beginning. There were multiple session zeros that the group had all been told about the small town of Tatahi, where they'd all be headed to on a millboat. The residents of Tatahi consist of a Goliath subrace, also known as Sakonga. Essentially, there were the three groups split up by groups of 3, 3, and 2, meaning 8 players. And I'll go through each of the groups as they were described. So the first group is called Tropic Thunder. This group was enlisted to head to the nearest Torgent supply outpost to meet with a sergeant who was happy to trade with them and Anewa. Anewa being the son of the chief of that town I'd mentioned before, Tatahi. There was a man there named Horace who knew that the magic weapon, the Breath of the Tempest, was not safe in Luke Pomeroy's hands and decided to have it handed to Poa, who he's on good terms with. Luke Pomeroy being the current sort of captain of a place called Torgent, which was essentially just a colony of other what's the word for it? Foreigners who'd come and set up a large colony there to start mining out resources. Poa being the chief of that town I mentioned before. Heading back, they were then attacked by Luke's personal guard, who'd attempted to attack them with a sword. The next group was Team Crime. Team Crime were asked to sneak in and take the Breath of the Tempest, and they'd be dropped at Apora Bay and told to head to the Torgent outpost, where they could stealth in and then take it away. They had stealthed in, weren't able to find it, but had decided to head back. On heading back, they were ambushed by Sawagin and were eventually rescued by people who had found them after they had sort of eaten shit. The last group was God Squad, who had arrived in Torgent at the start of their pilgrimage. They'd met Mio, a Yuan Ti from the Elam East Empire, who would direct them. These are a lot of names I'm throwing at you. They don't all really matter at the moment. What matters mostly is what happens afterwards, once I start sort of studying the scenes and stuff like that. So they were asked to deal with a potential dino nearby. They had done so, and then they would decided to go to Tatahi as well. Eventually, all of these three groups had all met up and decided to, just mingle before the town was attacked by Torgent. And unfortunately, they had a lot of their civilians captured because of the stealing of the weapon. That is sort of the scene that it was set. There was a whole bunch that happened in the game that I'll get into very, very briefly and sort of just gloss over as much of it as possible. But that is sort of just the scene at the moment. So after this, the group had investigated Torgent, tried to bring down Luke Pomeroy. They had... This is kind of funny, but they had, in fact, fought against some Hellbikers who had motorbikes from Hell, free to set into Avernus. And then from there, they had beaten Luke Pomeroy, rescued the townsfolk, and then they decided, all of them, to take one of the boats and go off sailing and adventuring all together as one group. That's how it sort of started. That's how the group was originally, formed. There were a few things after that, which I will get into very, very briefly, but I do want to touch on what happens afterwards, what my plans were. Just because I've set the scene already, I'm going to go through now just each of the characters and what I had planned for them in the long run. Notice a couple of these are longer, a couple of these are a little shorter, just because I don't know what I was really working with. I never really got the chance to make a lot of these. So, let's start with number 1. We'll go in alphabetical order. Alright, so number 1. Aoife. Aoife was a blood hunter who had joined the game very, very recently, because one of the characters, unfortunately, had passed away before that. So, Aoife was sort of a Witcher vibe, which was very, very cool. I was very, very sort of happy with the idea of working with that one. We didn't really get to play with it very often. But the plans I had sort of in store for this particular character essentially were a bit of a, like, because she had been loyal to a different sort of group, it was to introduce a character from their past, and then sort of like if you've played FF12, like a judge sort of thing, where they were kind of at odds with this figure from the past, and then eventually, hopefully, they had sort of, some bigger showdown that would lead to like a bigger fight with a BBEG that I had planned. I didn't really have much written for Aoife, unfortunately, just because a lot of this was, the very last second. I never really got the chance to do this. So, yeah, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot I could do. But I had some pretty cool ideas to start off with that were sort of becoming things before the game had ended. Alright, so, next one, Cass. I did not have a lot planned for Cass, because I never really got much information about the character realistically. I sort of tried to find information about them, and I never really had it, so I was going to introduce something entirely different in the end. So it was going to be, I don't know if you guys have played Octopath Traveler 2, but it was sort of going to be like that. There was going to be like an oil baron in their hometown, because they were kind of a cowboy, and, the idea of it was going to be that they were destroying the home area of Cass, and it was less of a combat and more of like trying to work with the town nearby to try and get rid of this guy. Once again, I didn't really have a lot that I was sort of happy with, but it was enough that I could sort of just like rely on that just in case I needed to. But I was hopefully going to have more plans for this character eventually. Alright, Dazana. This one was interesting. So Dazana is sort of a warlock, and essentially they were all about they were working with a fae who was trying to get them to do some unkind things. During the game, there was a part in it where this hag had shown up and asked them to do some things, takes care of some business for her, which the group was doing before the game had ended. With that, they had also met a kobold, a little kobold man, who in reality was the one who had burned down Dazana's circus, which is the reason why she came from Material Plane, looking to get revenge on this guy. It was going to eventually have the hag sort of be BBEG if they had gone that direction. It wasn't guaranteed that it'd be the case, but that was sort of where I was imagining it could have gone. And with the kobold, I have no idea what was going to happen to him. That was all up to them. So, yeah. This one was very, very straightforward. Revenge story that was sort of just misplaced. That was sort of what I had the idea for, but I was always happy to move that in if I needed to. But yeah, I was very happy with this particular backstory. Kaori. Okay. This one is hopefully not long. But I will set the scene very, very quickly. This is a literal starman. Guy fell from the sky, landed on the realm, and from then had amnesia. He was sort of a Superman thing, which was trying to draw parallels to. So the group had found his little landing pod, I should say, and then from there they had discovered ways to see little memories that he had from a little orb that he had in there as well, which the group was working on doing. From there, the group had also then continued onwards, meeting some of his kin, astral elves. They met his sister and uncle, which I don't think the group had known about, but eventually the character did. From there, they had then sort of moved into just trying to recover something from the sea that they hadn't actually gotten to doing yet. The plan of this was to have Kaori himself be sort of a important thing to his family, a record keeper, sort of like a memory keeper, which his sister had then wiped his memory because she realized there's going to be some shady shit going down with his grandfather. Sent him to the realm, that way he wouldn't be touched, and that his father couldn't do it, and then his family had been looking for him ever since. From then on, the group was probably going to go into the astral plane and probably had to fight his grandfather, fucking Emperor Palpatine style. Which was sort of what the idea I had for him was. But yeah, it was going to be very straightforward. A lot more stuff was going to happen in the meantime for the, like, the filler of it, but nothing that was too important to the very ending, which was going to lead to, hopefully to that fight. If not, maybe he would have just been like, hey, you know what? I want to be a memory thing. You know what? Let's take over the goddamn realm. That sounds fun. Which would have been a really, really fun Campaign 3. But yeah, that's sort of just that one. It's longer, and there's a lot more to it. But at the moment, there isn't much that I really need to go into. Ostif. I had some very fun stuff planned for Ostif, which I was very, very happy with. So, Ostif is part of a sort of League of Scarecrows that were all manufactured by a magician. They were all sort of constructs. And with that said, he was so he realized originally that one of those other scarecrows that he had met in his travels had a berserker axe inside it. With that said, he was going to have a sort of all-devouring orb. I can't remember exactly what the word for it is, but there is this orb that would have been in him, and his whole deal was attaching things to himself and sort of consuming them. And because of that, he was going to have a black hole magic item in his stomach. And yeah, that one was pretty simple. It was going to tie into these things called envoys, which was sort of personifications of emotion, where his creator was actually one of those, but it's, also not incredibly vital at the moment. But yeah, it's essentially, not as straightforward as the rest of them. It's very, very open, not really much to do from there, but I'm sure we would have built on it as we had played it out. Okay, Peace Walker. This guy is Captain America, without the serum, I guess. He was all sort of about, being an actual superhero. It was very, superhero tropey, very, very fun. And essentially, I was going to have him sort of come into odds with a man named the Duke of Dazanorm. It was essentially just going to be sort of a tyrant. I had originally imagined him to be this character's sort of Red Skull, main villain sort of thing, which was very, very interesting, and I was so upset we couldn't get to play it out, because I was very excited to play that NPC, but yeah, it was going to be just, they go there, and this guy's going to be, just entirely, super, super comical villain, just absolute freak of nature, and yeah, I was excited to see how that one had gone, because it was going to have some power-ups for him down the line that would have sort of transitioned him into being that sort of superhero that he wanted to be, or if he wanted to not use them and then sort of just be a superhero on his own merit. Yeah, it was something that we didn't really have formed. It was meant to be a very, very late game, but I was excited to see how it would have played out in the end. Yeah. Okay, Razmiel. This one is timey-wimey. It was always very, very timey-wimey. Cool. So, the group had discovered an item called the Portent of Possibility. Essentially, it was a sort of piece of the Flux that I hadn't told the group about, but it was part of the Flux, where the Flux is all about time and space. There was a group called the Society of Cadence. The Society of Cadence was going to have a massive piece of this flux, and it was going to be very much so about learning about it, gaining power-ups through that way, and eventually going to where Razmiel had wanted to go, the place called the Ever After, and helping to try and save it after a different group in the world had unfortunately unleashed a bit of a calamity there. But yeah, it was going to be just, very much, scholarly, and very much so about, time and the space and the flux and things like that, and potentially pull on some of the interesting time sort of shenanigans. Nothing that I had really had concrete yet, because it was all meant to be very, late game, but I think in the end it worked out sort of okay with what I had planned, and I was very excited to do this one, because I thought that the idea of the flux was very, very cool. Hey, last and probably not least, Velostar. I can't remember his first name anymore, it's been a little while. But essentially this one was going to be kind of weird. I didn't really know what to do for him. He was very, very straightforward. It was probably going to be just about speaking to his god, coming into contact, hopefully with him or an emissary of it. Also, incredibly late game. and very likely it was going to be just about making the greatest construct of all time, which, he would have been sort of scouring around looking for bits and pieces to make it, and then hopefully, in the very, very, late game about it, it would have been used in some pretty cool cinematic way. The player who plays Velos is all about that kind of thing, and so I didn't really have much of an idea of what to do, but I knew that he absolutely could carry any idea that I had sort of growing on his own. So I was very, very excited to see what would have happened if we had kept playing this game out. Okay, so I had 2 BBEGs in mind. The first one being Lucaad Pomeroy. He is totally original, OC, don't steal. He's not Swain from League of Legends. But yeah, he was all going to be about that kind of thing. And I actually had the idea of this group and the other group that was playing alongside this group at a different table. There were 2 separate groups in this world that I had running sort of simultaneously, not in the same days, of course, but, running in the same sort of time period. And the idea of it was that they were going to be all about the first primordials. Lucaad Pomeroy was very much so going to be about the Kraken, the very first Kraken, the Great Unbeheld. And it was probably going to lead to a very massive sort of nautical fight, which I was very excited for, believe it or not. I was very, very excited to see how that had happened. And then, the group probably having to try and contain this massive Kraken back in the negative plane. But once again, I didn't have that plan because that was so long away. But it was something that I had been very sort of excited about and had wanted to see come to fruition. The other plan I had was tying back into Cowrie's backstory, which was for the first primordial of magic, Arkan-Ra, to be let loose, and less of a fight and more of the group trying to, overcome this obstacle in some way. And yeah, so those are 2 BBGs that I had in mind. Obviously, the game would have changed in the long run, and there could have been a million different NPCs who would come and go, and one of them could have been the BBEG. But yeah, for right now, the final sort of big bosses were meant to be primordials drawn upon by mortals who may not really understand the true power of them. But yeah, this was something that I was very, very excited about. And sort of, whenever I do D&D campaigns, I'm always sort of just imagining the late game, how I get to the late game, how I get there and there and there. And I also realized that all of the great payoffs come off from a longer game where you have the group starting off pretty weak and then getting to fight those big things later on. But it was torture having to wait for so long. But yeah, those are the massive BBEGs I had planned. When I was first sort of planning out this script, I had no idea sort of how much I'd reflect on the notes and things I had taken, not just for this campaign, but the one before this one, and the one before that one even, and just sort of how much I didn't realize these sort of meant to me. It's sort of weird, and I think this is a better thing to say, because the original outro I had for this was going to be very, haha, that's how it all sort of ended, and I think that's a bad thing to do. I think a better way to do this is to say that sometimes stories don't get to finish the way that we thought they would, but that doesn't really make them any less worth telling. And I think that's a better note to end this on. So yeah, the people who would share the table with me, the people, not just the ones who I'd end the game with, but the ones before that as well, thank you so much for having been involved in that 6-year period of time where we had non-stop games. That was genuinely probably a very, very important part of my social life. And, I'm so happy to have shared this, not just with them, but, anyone who's watching this video. And I've just got to say that, yeah, shit happens, and unfortunately you won't be with the groups that you're with forever, and as much as you want to be, sometimes it doesn't happen. So, I wanted to also say that I'm probably moving away from video game stuff for now. I've got a couple of video essays I wanted to write on, that I'm probably going to upload soon, hopefully. I will say as well that they're going to be a lot more positive than the ones in the past, if you remember Reezy Rants. Jesus Christ, that's old. But, yeah, I'm sort of trying to move into, more positive stuff, so I'm probably going to move into, more oh, this is why I love this thing, and here's why you should too, and that's sort of how I'm, probably going to move on to this sort of next couple of videos. The gaming stuff won't disappear, but I think those are probably better for me at the moment. So yeah, if you're watching this, thank you very much, for watching. If you're a player who had played in the game and decided to check it out, I hope that what I had planned was originally kind of lining up with what you had imagined for the character. And yeah, that's it. So thank you very much for watching. No matter, if you're not anyone who hasn't, seen this stuff before, yeah, that's about it. Anyway, see ya.